Hello, everyone. Well, after this week's three-part series that was really slower, took a lot more time, I thought I'd do something kind of simple. I was going back through some of, these sheets. As you know, I love, these are my Artisto pads. And one of the things I love doing is, where's the cover here? Well, this is an old one because now their covers are purple. So I was just going through here and kind of looking through some things. And what I noticed is I just naturally use certain brush strokes. Sorry for my camera movement here. Certain brush strokes, and I thought I'd just share those with you. So this one, I make these names up just to be fun, to be quite honest. This one I did a swirl. This one I did two C strokes. This one's kind of two C strokes side brush. So I just wanted to show some of these to you that you could use when you're painting some of your flowers. So the other thing that's really interesting, I never paint with a tiny brush. I always paint with my number 8 Velvet Touch Princeton brush. And lately, don't ask me what's going on here, guys. I have white gouache in my fingernails. I've been using this, look at this little tiny brush. It's the Zen Art brush, and I don't know why, I'm all of a sudden really enjoying it. So that is what I am using today. And I wanted to fit several flowers on here, so I thought I'd use a smaller brush. I'm using my MeiLang palettes, by the way, which you know I love. If you're a beginner, pick these up. They are so great. They're great pigments. They're creamy. They're transparent. They're wonderful. And I really love them. I have tried every paint there is, and I love these. So the first flower I want to do, let me just draw like the center of my flower here. I don't know if you can see that. That's just really a guideline. And then what I'm going to do is, this is like a swirl. So I notice this in my classes, this can be a little tricky for people. I'm going to use the tip of my brush, and then when I get to the end, practice this kind of swirl around. So I'm going to go from here, point and be moving, start swirling your brush. It's kind of hard for me even to do slowly because I just do this fast all the time. So point, swirl, and come around with the tip of your brush. So I'm applying pressure to start with my point, and then I start applying pressure, and then I swirl my brush. So just practice that. It's really hard for me, to be honest, to do it kind of slow. I'm going to go right here, point, press, and swirl. Just like that. It's so funny because I do this pretty naturally, but when I'm trying to explain to you guys, now I'm just tapping in wet on wet. Sometimes it can be kind of tricky because I'm slowing myself down, so I'm really thinking about it. And then I'm going to just make this a side flower. So point, press, and lift up. And that just looks like a little lip on a flower. And then you could do some more over here. Point, swirl, maybe a little point, swirl. You could add in some little ones here. Point, swirl. But get used to swirling your brush like that. So point, pressure, swirl around. Point, pressure, swirl around. See, I can do it much better when I'm quicker. When I'm going slower, for some reason, it kind of gets weird. Do one more. Point, press, and just spin your brush around. Point, press, and spin your brush around like that. I'm also leaving this little gap in here. So maybe practice a whole sheet of these. Point, swirl around. Point, swirl around. Point, swirl around like that. Just practice a whole page and then go in with creating the middle of your flower and just do those all the way around. So it's much harder for me to go slow, point, swirl, around. Okay, so that's the swirl. How do you like that for an official name, huh? The next one I do is, well, I'm going to do the side of my, use the side of my brush. I use the side of my brush a lot. I actually didn't even realize how much I did that until just recently when I was trying to slow myself down to explain something. It's like, oh, wow. Okay, so let's create, here's the center of our flower. And I do that so that all my petals are facing back towards that flower and the side of my brush. So what I'm going to do, let me show you the brush stroke first. Point, so I'm holding my brush somewhat parallel to the paper. Point, and then I start pulling my brush sideways as I put more pressure. So point, side of my brush. Okay, like that. Point, side of my brush. So instead of, you've seen me show you like point, press, opening up the brush and down. Sorry, I hit my hand there. This is different. You're kind of coming from the side. And I noticed I use this technique actually a lot. Point, press, the side of my brush, like that. Okay, so let's go around this flower here. Let me pick up some paint here. Ooh, that is vibrant, isn't it? I love these MeiLang colors. They're so fun. Okay, so let's make sure we're going from the point side of my brush and I'm ending here. So point, side of my brush, turn my paper, and really you could almost do your guidelines. So a 5-petal flower, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That way I can kind of follow those. Otherwise, I'm telling you, even my leaves petals get really wonky. Point, side of my brush. I'm really opening up the barrel of that brush. Turn my paper. Point, press, like that. Here's my other 2 lines. Point, press, and point, press. There you go. So this kind of reminds me of a periwinkle almost, a little bit. The periwinkles, oh, I have a tiny little spider on there. Aren't quite that pointy, I don't think, but it kind of reminds me of that. And then I'm going to go in really quickly here and go over that a bit. So point, press, point with the side of my brush, press, point, side of my brush, point, side of my brush. All right, sorry, hope I didn't make you completely dizzy there. You could almost go into the background too, just wet your brush and create a lighter value, meaning more water versus paint. So the color is different. So right here, I used a pretty dark value. Here's a lighter value because it's more water, less pigment. Okay, so just create that on your palette, tap off your brush, and you could even go in, point, and put some in the background. Point, press, point, press. This almost looks like a poinsettia. Point, press, like that. And gosh, you could almost just keep going. Point, press, and there you go. So that's kind of that point press. Let me show you too, because I use that more for my leaves than recently anyway, than almost any other brush stroke for my leaves. So let me show you that real quick, because it's the same brush stroke. So say I have, let's just add a little stem here. There we go. And I've got another stem coming out there. So point, side of my brush. So I've got my brush sideways. and then up to a point. Look what a perfect stem or leaf that is. Point, press, point, press, like that. I could even do this way, point, side of my brush, and then let's go in and add a little bit of blue to that just to have some fun. Point, press, look how beautiful that is. There we go, that magic of watercolor, right? There we go. Look how pretty. So that is the side of my brush. Let me show you that one more time. So instead of creating a point, press, point, which is a compound stroke, straight on, point, press, like that, I'm turning my brush sideways. Point, press, like that. Okay, so I'm holding my brush and pulling it this way instead of this way. All right, so I hope that makes sense to you. Let me see, what is one more? We could do 2 C strokes. That's another one I use a lot for flowers, more like daisies and things like that. So let's create our center, and we're going to create our little guidelines there because otherwise mine will go really wonky. And let's pick up for daisies, let's get a little bit of yellow here. Ooh, my palette's getting full, guys. I'm going to add some water because yellow, cad yellow, is quite vibrant. Okay, so here I'm going to use 2 C strokes. So C strokes are going to be more like point, press, like little half moons. Point, press, and a lot of times they can be kind of longer too, for me anyway. Point, press, a C stroke or half moon, point, press. This is a good way too to leave white space in the center, and you don't want to leave too much white space. So let's practice on here. I'm going to pick up, I've got yellow in my, oops, you can't see my palette. I've got yellow in my palette here. Let me see if I can fit my palette in. I'm going to add a tiny bit of orange to that, but not quite. Mix it completely, and let's go here. So I'm holding my brush in, pointing the tip in the direction I want to go. Point, C stroke, lift. Point, C stroke, lift. Now that one I didn't even get any white space, which is fine. Let me lighten up my paint a little bit. Point, C stroke, point, C stroke. Okay, so that is another way. Point, C stroke, point, C stroke. Let's keep going. Point, C stroke, point, C stroke. Keep going. Point, C stroke, point, C stroke. And that leaves that beautiful middle area still. I don't want to stick my hand in here. Point, C stroke, point, C stroke. And you can go kind of slow here so you can see how wide the belly of your brush is getting. Point, C stroke, point, C stroke. Okay, go again. Ooh, let's add in a tiny bit of red. See what we get. Point, C stroke, point, C stroke. Look at that. Point, C stroke, point, C stroke. Point, C stroke, point, C stroke. Okay. So I'm just kind of going through these again to show you now. Point, C stroke, point, press, open the belly of the brush, and C stroke. Point, C stroke, point, C stroke. So there you go. And those C strokes, what you're doing is very light pressure, just the tip, pulling your brush, and then start pushing, opening that brush, and going into a slight moon shape. point C stroke, like so. Now you could actually, the last one I'll show you that I do is a, you know what I have to do because it's driving me crazy? I know, I'm kind of weird, you guys. I'm going to pick up a little bit of brown, a little bit of Payne's blue or gray. Let's see here. And I got a dot in the middle here because I don't know why that drives me crazy if I like don't finish my flower. There we go. Look how much better that looks. That almost looks like an anemone. It has too many petals though. Okay, so you can do these long ones as well. So here's our center. Let's do more like a daisy. So let me grab some yellow here. My goodness, running out of space. I need to clean my palette, you guys. Hold on one second. I've got a palette here. I can add some yellow. These are my Winsor Newton paints. I don't use too often these days because they're too expensive for me to use all the time. Okay, so here's our petal. Our flower. I'm going to draw extra long guidelines and point, press, and pick up. Okay? Point, press, and pick up. So that's another single stroke petal. Point, press, and pick up. And then I'll go in and add in some in between, in case you're wondering why I'm leaving such big gaps. Point, press, and pick up. Don't want to put my hand in wet paint. Point, open up that belly, like that. Point, press, open up the belly. Point, press, open up the belly. And now I can go in between. Let's go with a red just to play here. Point, press. Oh, that's pretty. Point, press. I'm really opening up that that brush. Point, press. I don't even know what kind of flower this is at this point, you guys. Point, press. I wanted to use a contrasting color so you could kind of see the different brush strokes. Point, press, opening up that belly and pick up. Point, press. So that is a single stroke petal. Point, press. And I use that one actually a lot with maybe sunflowers. Okay. And then let's go on the inside because that'll make me crazy if I don't fill that in. So I'm going to go ahead and fill that in. There we go. Whew, I feel better. All right, so excuse me as I turn this. So I hope that gave you some different ways to create some petals and leaves as well. I use the side leaf a lot actually. Especially when I'm tucking in flowers to the side, petals to the side, I will point, press like that all the time. Point, press to tuck them into my flowers. So I'm using my brush sideways. Point, press, and then I might just add in a little bit of a different color. Point, press, like so. So that makes to me a perfect little leaf. Point, press, and there you go. I hope that gave you some kind of fun ideas. Let's go in and add maybe another petal here, a leaf here. So using the tip of my brush, which is great with this brush because it's a really fine point liner. I actually really like these Zen Art brushes. I've had them for like a year. So point, press. Look at that perfect leaf. Point, press. Like that. Let me grab a little darker I could even mix that in, point press, point press. So I've got the side of my brush. Turn my, so I'm wanting the petal to go this way. So I'm holding my brush, so I'm pulling it towards me sideways. Point press. Now that, look how pretty that is because I kind of double dipped my brush. Point press. There we go. Point press. Point press. I find I can do that sideways leaf too really quickly. So that's why I think I use it a lot. And then let's just go in here and create that swirl one again. Point, press, open up my brush and swirl it around. I really have to tell you, it's hard for me to go slow on that one. I don't know why, but it is. So I'm going to do it again. Point, press, and bring it around. Just practice that one over and over. Point, press, and bring it around. 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 It really takes a little finessing and getting used to the feel of that. Point, press. I'm just playing now, adding in some orange. There we go. Let's just maybe even play a little bit and add some white. Ooh, look at that. Okay, I don't want to get too crazy here. Because next thing you know, I'll be pulling out those metallics, you guys, and you'll be going, oh my gosh, there she goes again. But sometimes this white can be kind of fun to play with. There you go. Okay, well, I hope that was a fun little exercise. I wanted to do just something fun and easy. So, you know, after coming out of that last 3-part series I did, I don't know if you did that one. Here it is, which was really slower, more methodical. I wanted to just give you guys something kind of fun to play with. So give these a try. Swirl, side of brush, side brush. I'm just kind of naming those for here and here. And the main thing you want to make sure you're doing there is if you're creating, I'm running out of room here, if you're creating a petal coming this way, or let's say this way, instead of holding your brush like this or like this, I'm holding it sideways. Tip of my brush, side of my brush, like that. So that's how I'm doing the side brush for those leaves and things, is instead of holding my brush pointing in the direction I want to go, I'm holding my brush parallel. Point, press, point, press, point, press, like so. Okay, I hope that helps. Let me know in the comments. I think these, if you can get these 3 brush strokes, you're gonna have all kinds of choices for your flowers. All right, everybody, happy painting and have fun. Thanks for being here. I love this little community we've created and I'm having so much fun. And I'll see you all soon. All right, bye-bye.